Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in again. Today is going to be a little different. I am going to be publishing an episode I did with my buddy Mitch over at the MyFICapsule podcast, and we're talking about the Fire in Vegas event that the Donegans and Brad Barrett from ChooseFI put on, where we designed our extraordinary life while having fun in the least FI city in the country, Las Vegas. Listen in.
Hey, what's happening? And welcome to the MyFICapsule podcast. This is episode 2, and we're pretty excited. We're going to relive and attempt to review our key takeaways and experiences from this event that we went to called Fire in Las Vegas. And maybe you heard about it if you're in the personal finance community. It took place in early April 2024. And I got to tell you, this event was a blast. The hosts, we've got Alan and Katie Donegan. They were unbelievable. Brad Barrett, the man is exactly as advertised. He is incredible. We met some great people at this small event. There were just 80 of us there. We're really excited to share this experience with you today. So welcome to the MyFICapsule. Let's go get it. All right. Well, welcome to the MyFICapsule again, fam. Today, we're going to kick off an episode. This is kind of unique. We're going to do a two-person episode. I've got Megan Combs with me from A Latte Money, and it's pretty fun. Like, we're going to co-host this thing, and she's going to be a guest. And I got to give you a little rundown on her because her rap sheet is pretty sweet. So Megan comes to us with a mission. She's here to help teach everyone how to invest on their own. She doesn't want you to have to deal with an expensive financial advisor like many of us might think when you first take a look at evaluating your money. She's here to help you build your money confidence and help you achieve your own financial freedom. Megan's learned this on her own. She dove deep into this information through personal experience, living out the things that she read and the things that she studied and devoured from the great works and experts like J.L. Collins, Paula Pant, Brad Barrett, Gene Chatsky. These are all the same people that I personally studied, so I'm not surprised that she got where she is by studying those people and going out and implementing and executing. And last but not least, her expertise is simply to distill down complex financial topics into really easy, really simple ways that you can digest content, and you can find it all on Instagram. She's here to help kick off this podcast, and later on this year, she plans to start her own podcast called A Latte Money Investing. Megan, welcome. Thanks so much for coming on the show and giving me a shot. Right out the gates, we're on episode 2. Hopefully neither of us regret this, but welcome.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I don't think we're going to regret it at all.
I don't think so either, but you know what they say, put 2 rookies on a podcast and it'll end up twice as bad.
I hope not.
I don't think it will. So, all right. Well, I'm excited to relive this event. I mean, we were there, what, 2 weeks ago, roughly at this point in Las Vegas. And our goal is to really just capture some of its highlights. And so before we jump in, do you want to share just a little bit on your background at all from like a professional standpoint? Maybe when you found the fire community and how long you've been pursuing whatever your version of financial independence is.
Absolutely. I found financial independence, I believe it was February 2019, and it was through Choose FI, Brad Barrett's podcast. I actually heard him and Jonathan interviewed on Gene Chatsky's Her Money podcast. And I found the idea of financial independence incredibly intriguing because at that moment in my life, I was, gosh, how old was I? I think I was 32, and I had not actually found a job that I loved going to every day. Every time somebody said that to me, I just never really connected with that idea of loving going to work and never wanting to retire and never wanting to stop because they love it so much. I never had that. And so when I found this idea, I was like, oh man, here it is. Here's what I've been searching for. And it's not just because I want to stop working. It's also, the fact that I have to squeeze my life into 2 days a week, I feel like, because I dedicate so much time to a job. And financial independence just allows us to break out of that and to design a life that we want to live, whether it's working part-time or not working at all, spending time with kids, spending time with friends, family, hobbies, whatever it is, and not having to squeeze that into 2 days a week. So that's how I found it and what I really pulled out of it. Professionally speaking, I work in tech. I didn't always work in tech though. So I know a lot of people think financial independence people are the tech bros, but I swear I'm not one of those. I've only been in tech for 5 years, and I actually switched from art history and museum studies. I lived in New York City for 7 years, trying to make it work, and it never did. So my money background actually started there. And I didn't start investing until I was 28 years old because of that, because I was, in very low paying jobs in the art world and usually didn't have any sort of retirement plan. And once I got one, I was maybe contributing 5% of my salary. And I also was picking stocks, which was because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know that index funds were a thing. And so I not only didn't make money, I lost money because of the stocks that I picked. So anyway, once that I started listening to like podcasts at that time, Jean Chatzky's was my first one, Her Money, and I started getting my financial, life together. Once I got listening to her and getting my money together, it just went from there. And that's where I started learning about investing and what you do and how to budget. And I got all my credit card debt paid off, started investing. And then from there, I became kind of obsessive about personal finance. I just loved it. I felt it was a way to control something that really shapes your life. And it just felt really good. So I went from there. And yeah, that's how I found financial independence in 2019. And I never looked back. I'm probably, I would say, 7 to 10 years out from that goal. Hopefully sooner if I can kick it up a notch in the next few years.
Awesome. So it's really interesting. Hey, do you remember when you started this journey? And if I heard you right, I think you kind of were like, I think it was sort of around, and then you landed on February of 2019. And I don't know my exact date that I found this. What's interesting is I found versions of financial independence by initially looking into real estate. I don't remember the date, but I remember where I was. So I'm curious if you'll remember where you were when you first had the light bulb go off. But I was in a tractor farming for my father-in-law, and I have my cell phone hooked up to the tractor speakers. And I would either listen to like gangster rap in a tractor, which is really funny, or I would be listening to podcasts. And I was listening to Tim Ferriss, and he kicked off his episode saying that this is the most requested guest in his show's history. And I'm thinking, Jeff Bezos, give me somebody big, Elon Musk, right? And then he says, Mr. Money Mustache. And I remember that like it was yesterday. So just real quick, do you remember where you were the moment you found it, or is it not that vivid for you?
I mean, it's definitely not on a tractor, which by the way, I did not know tractors had speakers. I'm just thinking of them as like the old-timey ones, but I'm obviously not a farmer. No, I was just in my living room of my apartment, probably cooking, listening to a podcast. I listened to podcasts literally all day long, so that's probably where I was.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same way. Well, that's awesome. So, I love the background. I think it's terrific. I think people love hearing how we all stumbled into this or found our way into this. So, thanks for expanding on it and giving people a good rundown. So, before we get into like the true details and events and the experiences of the weekend, I thought it might make sense to kind of quickly outline, just from a bullet standpoint, what this thing looked like. Because overall, like I feel like it went pretty fast. Is that kind of how you took it?
Yeah, I mean, it was a weird combination of I felt like it went really fast, but also like I was there for years at the same time because of how the depth of it, right?
Yeah, I mean, depth is a great word. I mean, there was so much to that whole thing, and it was very much kind of it kicked off a little bit through the WhatsApp. I mean, in what world do you go to a conference with people you've never met before? Which I actually did know somebody there, which I think I might have been one of the only people that knew somebody there that didn't bring them with them. And when you just start connecting with strangers through a Facebook group for this private event and a WhatsApp group, it did kind of warm people up a little bit, right? I mean, I can't remember. Did you share a room with a stranger, or did you have your own room?
No, I actually first booked Motel 6 and and changed rooms because it was such a creepy hotel. And so I moved to the New York, but yeah, I had my own room because to me it was worth paying for the room at the New York where everybody was staying in Vegas and not have to be at this really creepy hotel even though it was just down the street. So, yeah.
I do remember that now that you say it, because that'll kind of help us perfectly segue in. So we all start chit-chatting on the WhatsApp and on the Facebook group, and people are saying, "Oh, I'm going to come in at this time or that time. I'm going to land at this time or that time. Anybody want to split an Uber?" And I sprung for a solo Uber. Actually, I did try an Uber with somebody, but the timing didn't work. They didn't answer me fast enough, and I'm impatient. So off to New York I went. But somebody out in the crowd, from our group, hopefully will hear this because we are going to share this in our group. Somebody did tough it out and stay at the Motel 6 that you wussed out on. So make sure you throw some shade at Megan, whoever you were, because you know who you are and you stayed at that dicey establishment anyway. So this thing kicks off on WhatsApp, it kicks off on Facebook, and then on Friday, I landed in, and my original plan was kind of just go wander around a little bit in Vegas. I enjoy Vegas personally, but I've never been there by myself, and my wife didn't come with me. And all of a sudden, somebody says, "Hey, we're gonna go down to the chocolate bar and hang out." And that's where the whole thing sort of kicked off and went downstairs and hung out with those people. But before we kind of dive into some of those details, I just thought it would make sense to kind of flow through night one, day two, day three, just some of the highlights, if that's all right. And it was just where I led with. We kicked off at this bar downstairs at New York, New York. We had a planned dinner on Friday night at a place called Tom's Watch Bar. We had some break off groups where people kind of went off and did their own thing or went to bed. If I remember right, you were a nerd and went to bed early.
Yeah.
I went out for a nightcap with some new friends. The next morning, we walked over to the hotel. We had sessions where we convened and learned and planned from about 9 to 5. We had a break. Some of us went to a brewery. And then we came back and had a big old barbecue dinner that I think pretty much everybody attended. And we had a custom comedian, which I thought was pretty cool. And then on Sunday morning, we got off the Vegas Strip, went for a little car ride, and headed out to, was it called the Red Rock Canyon?
Yep, that's right.
I'm glad you remembered because I definitely didn't write it down. I just said we went for a hike on Sunday. And then we went back, had some Sunday sessions. We all said thank you, and we all said peace out. I mean, does that pretty much break it down?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much how it went. I don't know what time you got there on Friday, but I got there in the morning. And so I had my bags with me, and I did Uber with somebody named Mallory. Shout out Mallory. Hey. We became buds through the whole thing, which I thought was probably a good, way to, if you ever go to groups, events like this, to anybody listening, finding a bud at the beginning is probably your best bet. I mean, meeting everybody is awesome, but having that one bud you can always come back to is awesome. And Mallory was that for me. So anyway, we had our bags together and we're just kind of dragging them around the whole day until we could check in. So yeah.
So I think I know which, I don't know if there are multiple Mallories, but I'm pretty sure I know which one. And if I recall right, I think she's owed a little love because she's one of the first to take action and already is knocking out some side hustle stuff. Is that right? Do you know?
Yeah, so I believe her one of the sessions were, we'll probably dive into this a little bit later, but we had prompts that we had a group kind of give us ideas for, and hers was, how can I make money during the day while the kids are at school that is fun and creative? And we just had this, swirl of sticky notes that we threw at her with a bunch of ideas on them, and I believe she's already taken action on several of them, so she's killing it.
Yeah, agreed. She is. I happen to have not that session that you're talking about, but during one of the breaks when we were able to kind of step aside, do some self-reflection, I happened to sit with her and she was talking about a desire for a side hustle. And I actually said, like, you are one of the most like bubbly people and super fun to listen to. You need to become some kind of like a tour guide and take people around your town. She lives in a destination town. I won't share that with the world. I'll let her decide if she wants people to know where she lives, but she lives in a destination town. And I think she'd be terrific. So, all right, let's hop back on track. So was this your first like financial independence meetup in a big way? Or have you done some small local meetups, whether it's a ChooseFI or some other branded gathering?
Yeah, so I'm okay sharing where I'm from. I live in the Raleigh-Durham area, and there was a ChooseFI meetup that was started here. I forget who the lead was, but it is somebody who has reached FI, and I believe he has a blog. And I think he had stopped, he didn't have time to really plan the events. So I actually took over back in, like, I believe it was late 2019. And we were going, pretty well, having, going once a month, just hooking up and like chatting. And it was really great. I even had an event at the local library where one of our accountants came in and talked about like some tax optimization strategies. But then COVID hit, and a lot of these were happening in Raleigh, and I moved to Durham within the last few years. And so I kind of went by the wayside and I stopped hosting them. So I hope they keep going. There is somebody in that group, Lou, Lou, who lets me know when things are happening sometimes. And actually, because of him, I was able to snag a ticket to CampFi 2 years
Mm.
ago. I think it's Mid-Atlantic is the one that I go to in Virginia, and it was a great time. I loved it. I did share a room with a stranger that time, which was interesting, but it was fun. It was a lot. It was the same sort of thing where it was like 3 days jam-packed full of events, but it was much more like a summer camp for adults type of event. And I met so many people there. I met the woman who runs the economy conference. Her name escapes me right now, but I met her and we like hung poolside for several hours. Yeah, do you have her name?
Diana Merriman or Deanna
Yes,
Merriman?
Diana. Yes,
Yeah.
Diana. Thank you.
Yep.
I always wanted to call her Shannon. So hopefully she doesn't listen to this and get mad. But yeah, we hung poolside for a while and it was really fun. And I think hers is one of the ones that I have not been to and would really like to go to. But yeah, so those are the events I've been to in the past. And one of the reasons why I jumped into doing this is because Brad was running it and I've always wanted to meet him. And I thought he would be at that Camp 5 because he usually goes to the Mid-Atlantic ones, but he wasn't there that weekend. And I just saw this as a chance to meet him. And I do know about Alan and Katie Donegan. So I just was like, yeah, I'm going to do this, whatever, buying now. So bought the ticket.
Yeah, it's so you've been to a campfire, multiple. I've been to none. I happen to have one. It's like 50 minutes from my front door, but I've not been able to attend it because once I became aware of it, was too late because I have a 7-year-old and I kind of like him. And his birthday falls on the weekend that they host it every year, or we have the party that weekend every year. And this year it looks like I might be able to actually go attend it, which I'm looking forward to. And I forget who it was, but somebody at the group has attended that specific campfire, and it's at a really unique location that I think if you ever could do Campfire Midwest, I imagine the content will be wonderful, but the venue is supposed to be very, very cool. And there's this really quaint town nearby. I happen to grow up about 20 minutes from where it is. So good for you. I will tell you, I attended for almost the same reason. I heard 80 people, small event. Brad Barrett's hosting. I'm aware of the Donegans. I've listened to them speak on all kinds of different podcasts. And yeah, I also was excited to be able to meet Brad Barrett. I mean, what a cool opportunity to have that close connection. I can't remember what led you to pull the trigger before seeing an agenda. Was it basically what we just said?
Yeah, it was the fact that it was Brad Barrett, the Donegans, and 80 people was also the same thing. And I knew that even if there wasn't an agenda, it would just be fun. So the Vegas part gave me a little bit of pause because I know how expensive Vegas can be. But I just was like, that's going to be very interesting to go to an event like that in Vegas of all places.
Yeah, what's funny is I didn't care what the agenda was. I was about to hop in my cold plunge and Brad kicks off the podcast. It sounded different. I listened to it and I was like, oh, I am going to this. And I walked upstairs and I was like, hey, wife, any chance you want to go to Vegas this weekend? And she says no. And I was like, well, I'm going with or without you. So are you sure? She goes, why are you going to Vegas? And I told her, oh, there's this event thing going on. She's like, well, what are they going to work on or what's the agenda? And I said, I have no idea. I don't really care. I'm buying a ticket and I'm going. And she's like, okay, you deserve a trip on your own. Go do a trip on your own and have a blast. So, all right, very cool. So, transitioning a little bit, I initially met you at the chocolate bar, right? And people are just standing around drinking whatever random martinis that they're making us right outside of the Hershey store. And I don't know what your sense was, but did it take some time to warm up a little bit to people, or did it just kind of kick off and feel natural because we all have this one huge thing in common?
I think it depends on your personality. So I am an introvert, but I act like an extrovert. So and then the fact that we all did have this one thing in common and we're kind of nerding out on money topics, I found it a little bit easier. Also, I was with my, buddy Mallory. So and then I also met another buddy, ZV. And so we were kind of there and came together. And then it was just kind of easy to talk to a bunch of people and just jump in on conversations that you might have overheard and been like, ooh, that's interesting. I want to talk. And then, of course, Brad Barrett then shows up and, he comes to talk to my little group. And I'm standing like 1 foot from him and I'm sitting there like fangirling on the inside, but trying to ignore it and pretend like he's just a regular dude just who just like dropped into our conversation. And he's like talking and we're talking. And then I turn to him and I just say, yeah, I'm trying real hard not to fangirl right now. And he just laughs because he's like, why would you fangirl over somebody like me? Because he's so humble. And I love that about him. So anyway, yeah, I thought it was pretty easy because, like you said, we have a shared topic, but also I have this weird ability to not be an introvert in certain situations. So
Well, good for you. It doesn't hurt to be a chameleon in those scenarios. So I think we were in the same, I don't know, oval, whatever, because I remember when Brad walked up and I thought to myself, I think that evening when I was walking back to my room, I was just kind of thinking back over the evening, and he comes up and introduces himself and basically one by one, hey, I'm Brad. Hey, I'm Brad. Hey, I'm Brad. And I don't think it was you, but it was somebody else who was just as, outgoing as you were, even though you say you're an introvert, but you're capable of being outgoing. Somebody finally said, Brad, we all know who you are. And then everybody laughed and that kind of softened the mood. And I'm with you. I didn't know what to expect because you hear this guy on the podcast and he has his persona and you just kind of wonder, like, is that really who you are? Or is that who you morph into as a podcast host? And for anybody who gets a chance to listen to this, he's exactly who he sounds like on the show. And he's just such a good guy. And that was such a fun way to meet him and just sort of chat and gather. And I was sipping on an espresso martini, which, by the way, I don't touch caffeine after about 11:30 a.m., which ironically is right now as we're recording this. If I drink caffeine past this time, I don't go to bed. And it was like 2:30 and I ordered a freaking espresso martini and then I laid in bed staring at the ceiling, not able to sleep and wondered why. And then the next day it actually hit me. But all right, so this was a pretty submersive experience and you've done that at ChooseFI as well. And I'm not going to ask you to compare the two, but just maybe generally speaking, for anybody who's listening to this that hasn't been to an event like this, do you think being in something like this where you really were just deeply, deeply engaged with a number of different people and thinking about subjects on a different level, do you think maybe that helped you take more action on whatever it is that you wanted to work on when you went home versus I listened to a podcast while cooking at home and I'll maybe get around to that. Do you think there was a significant difference?
So I've been thinking about this question, and to be completely frank, no, I think that it actually just, I listen to podcasts regularly, right? I mean, I listen to 5 a day, right? While I'm, showering, gardening, cooking, cleaning, driving, whatever. And because I immerse myself in that environment of personal finance, I'm consistently taking action. So I'm probably not the right person to answer this. The way that I saw this event was more a way of taking that immersive experience and dialing it up to 10. But I think it was just a way of augmenting the rest of my experiences of listening to podcasts on a regular basis. And so I will say, though, I said you mentioned earlier that I do want to start a podcast this year. I have been procrastinating that. I wanted to start that at the beginning of the year, and I've been procrastinating because I know it's a big time suck. And I think that it helped me meet Alan and Katie and start listening to their content and seeing what they've done and really thinking about what I want out of my life. That has helped me start planning it. Now I haven't started recording it, but I definitely have a plan in place for doing it. And, I've listened to Alan's podcast on how to create a podcast, and that part has helped, but I wouldn't say that it was a super strong motivator in making me take action just because I'm already the kind of person that's already taking action. That might not be the answer you want to hear, but it's the truth for me. So you might have a different experience though. What was your experience?
Well, I'm very thankful you put a lot of thought in that and answered it honestly because I'm not looking for any specific answer. I'm looking for an honest one. And as I listen to you, whenever my wife listens to this, she's probably gonna go, "Well, she sounds just like him," because I have my earbuds in, cutting the grass, blowing snow, painting the house, doing whatever it is that I'm doing. I've got podcasts in the ears and I don't listen to 5 a day. If you legitimately do that, that is unbelievably impressive. I probably get to about 7 a week is my guess, but I'm the same way. I will take action. I will stop what I'm doing, hit pause, email myself, and the subject line will just say research trusts. That's it. And I don't like a filled, ugly, messy inbox. Mine actually is making me twitch a little bit right now. There's a lot of things in there that need to get cleaned up. So I will say this though, and I bet you would agree, and no names being named, but I will tell you the question I asked you, there were a number of people at that event that they would answer it the way you thought that I wanted answered. And I would imagine you're nodding, but you can say whatever you want to say to that comment. I think there were a number of people there that was a game changer for them.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's probably the folks who, we are both in this space, wanting to start podcasts, kind of wanting to become part of the ecosystem of Brad Barrett and Alan Donegan and be one of these people. Whereas some of the people who attended, they just want to work their jobs and become financially independent, right? They don't want to start any sort of side hustle, financial side hustle or whatever. So I think it probably hits a little different for us than for them, which is great. And that's what I think Alan and Katie's purpose was. I think the reason why I hesitated answering the way I did is because I don't want to disappoint Alan or Katie when they listen to this. Like, I really did appreciate this event. I loved it. And I do think that I got a lot out of it. I just know myself very well that like I consistently take action because, I have anxiety and it trends towards taking action. So whenever I'm anxious about something. So, but yeah, I do think that the people who attended, who, are just living their normal lives and not trying to be, freaks like us who are trying to take on so much outside of our regular jobs. Um, freaks like me, I should say, probably got a lot out of this, or at least I really hope they did.
Yeah, I would think they would. And I don't think Alan or Katie or Brad or anybody would be in any way, shape, or form disappointed that you said, I already take a bunch of action and I came anyway. And I'll tell you this, for me, I had some stuff that this really, really helped me with, and I'll kind of go through it a little bit later. But I will say this, if I wouldn't have went to that event, I would not have been nearly as prepared for a pretty significant event that happened in my life this week that I'll end up sharing more on the podcast. But it's centered around a pretty big shift in my career and my future after a very long time invested in my career. And I walked away from that weekend with the ultimate validation, all of the clarity, everything came together. I still learned and still came away with some new things. Don't get me wrong there. But man, was it what this human, this freak, as you labeled me earlier, needed to walk away with to walk into this really big life moment. And so there would be no way to expect that everyone went there with no plan. They just found FI. They're dumping money into their VTSAX and chill, and they're living out their slog, waiting to get to the end. Am I going to make it in 10? Am I going to make it in 7? Like, there's no way you invite 80 people and that's where they all are, right? There are people in that room that are already there. There are people that are there that are very, very close to there. And there are people that are kind of in the middle. And I mean, heck, we had a 22-year-old there that is at the very beginning, which, by the way, that's when I started. I'm one of those lucky people that started at 22. I didn't find FI at 22, but yeah, thank you for the clap. This will not be on video, so I'm just going to announce to the world I just got clapped for. Thank you. I found this at 22, and I wasn't deep into this, but the good news is when you get started, the first thing to do is often get out of debt. And so that was my first step at 22, was to work on that and then stay out of debt. And then we just essentially kept finding new ways to invest. And every time we made more money, we were very intentional with it, and we invested some of it and spent some of it, and it worked very well for us. So, all right, real quick, and if the answer is no, no big deal. Is there anything else that you're working on other than the podcast? But I think that's great, that if that's what this kind of pushes you over the edge on, great. But is there anything else that you were interested in sharing that this might help you work on? Otherwise, we can just move on.
Yeah, actually, if you don't mind, my question during the exercise that I talked about earlier that Mallory did, where we were giving her ideas on sticky notes for a question that she asked. So my question was, how do I become the kind of person people look up to for personal finance advice? And the reason I was asking this is because I, as you mentioned earlier, have a personal finance side hustle, mostly geared towards investing topics, just because that's my passion and what I know the most about. And I'm on Instagram at a latte money, and I have, a few hundred followers. I think I'm over 500 now, which I've only been, in this business for 6 months. So I know it's good. It's a good trajectory, that I'm gaining followers, but it still feels like I am some sort of imposter who doesn't know what she's talking about, especially when the trolls get on and start saying that you're a female grifter, which is hilarious to me because I'm like literally telling you to buy index funds that I make zero money off of. So, okay. But I guess the reason why I asked the question that I did is that I felt like I didn't have the confidence to be giving this advice. internally, I felt like, why would anybody listen to me? And so my question was, how do I become the person that knows people should listen to me? And so that was just really great. I mean, a lot of the ideas that I got were ideas for my business. I still haven't gone through all of the sticky notes yet. I know what a lot of them are. And I mean, it's one of the reasons why I also wanted to start a podcast, because I think long form content, which is very different than Instagram, which is short form, will allow me to dive in deeper on some topics that I feel like are a little too complex to just put on Instagram. And I feel like it'll also help me establish that confidence in what I'm saying. So I don't know if I answered your question because I feel like I went on a tangent, but
All right, so here's what I'm going to say. Imposter syndrome is like the most real thing ever. If you walk into a room of 10, 15, 20 people in a professional setting and they've been in their careers, say 5 or 10 years. So maybe they're like a leadership, a director, an executive group, whatever. It may require truth serum, but I bet you the vast majority, I'm talking 15 out of 20, still look around and don't think they belong. And what's interesting is the 5 that believe they belong have either gone through a journey, which you're about to go through, it sounds like, to truly land there and identify as, no, I do belong. But there's a few of them that you know exactly who they are. And they're probably the last person you want to be around because they're so loud about it. And they might be too cocky or too arrogant or too fill in the blank, right? And so I think it's a really humble and very honest answer. And obviously, we did a little bit of prep for this, and it's kind of weird to drop this in the middle of this podcast, but I don't really care. It's my show. I can do whatever I want. I think this is really funny because going all the way back to the chocolate bar, you and I met briefly, and we were in a group of a small couple of people talking. And then I talked to you once or twice here or there. And then when it came time to leave the event, I said goodbye to you and called you the wrong name on accident. Apologize for it later. And then we talked for 40 minutes going into prep this podcast a week and a half ago. And like, I don't think you have any reason to have any concerns about how you carry yourself, how you present yourself. I don't know your money philosophies, but it sounds like you study all of the right people. And so chances are you're probably squared away. So I'd let that imposter syndrome go and move past as fast as you can. I mean, stay humble, keep learning, whatever. But I can tell you right now, when I went to record my first episode, which you've not heard yet because I haven't actually released it yet, there's a couple of little final hiccups I have to go through. I mentioned this right out the gates, right out the gates. And so I wouldn't be hung up on the imposter syndrome at all. So any last thoughts, or do we want to move on to some more fun stuff?
yeah, we can move on. But thank you very much for saying that. It's warms my heart to hear that.
Well, good. If nothing else comes out of this, we don't get one listener. Who cares? At least your heart was warm today.
Yes.
All right. So we had a plan. I really do want to shift gears. And I got to say, when you go to any kind of convention or event, I think the hosts can make or break everything. And we've already kind of shed our love on Brad Barrett early because we happened to meet him at the chocolate bar. If we would have met Katie and Alan sooner, I think we would have been talking about them a lot sooner too. And actually, you did kind of geek out about them quite a bit as well. So they've gotten their love. But I mean, in all honesty, those people are something else, right? Like they absolutely poured into us for whatever, the better part of 2.5 to 3 days and made themselves completely available and reachable through our little texting group, through the Facebook group. They wanted to make sure that they were just as excited and humbled, I think, as hosts to have said, out of nowhere, hey, we want to do this. We're just going to say we're going to do it. And we hope you all show up. And then we did. And they seemed genuinely humble. But is there any other just like love or anything you want to shed on those guys just as one more big thank you to them?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to start with Katie Donegan because she sat at our table a couple of times, and I really think she's such a genuine, kind person. And I know that probably not this weekend, but I think next weekend she's going on a silent meditation retreat. I forget where it is, but I was like, that is so cool. Can I come? And and I legit just wanted to be her like BFF. So Katie, if you're listening, that's my goal in life, is to be your best friend. So yeah, I loved Katie. And I thought that also the way that Katie and Alan fed off each other's energy was just epic and just made us laugh all the time. So Katie and Alan are obviously from the UK, from England specifically. So they have a British accent, and Alan kept saying, English phrases that maybe sometimes we were like, what are you saying? And so Katie would translate into, real English, American English. And it was just I guess you had to be there, but it was so funny because some of the words, I mean, most of us probably knew what they were, but it was great. And then Alan was like, wait, that's not the right word. What do y'all say? So it was just so great. And then for Alan, I just felt like he has such a way of presenting in front of a crowd. You can tell that he's perfected this skill. I mean, it was almost like he was post edited in real life, if that makes sense. Like if you take a
Oof.
podcast, right, and you post edit all the ums out, all of the weird pauses, all of that, like that was Alan live. And I was just in awe of that. And then he also still interjected some really awesome humor. And you could tell he was really into this concept of, building this kind of life that you wanted. He was really into building your extraordinary life. And he just really loved that concept. And you could tell that they had built that from themselves. And so that energy just radiated throughout the whole room. And I'm a huge nerd who likes to sit at the front of the class. I am definitely a Hermione in spirit. And so I, of course, sat in the front and I had a great time being kind of a little bit of a heckler, not heckling negatively, but just adding to that energy. And it was so much fun. And then last, but of course not least, Brad is everything that I always thought he was. He's very humble, self-deprecating, funny, very willing to listen to other people. And I could tell like he wanted to give his energy to everyone. And as one person, I mean, I know it's only 80 people, but as one person, I was like, Brad, like you don't have to give your energy to all of us. It's okay. Like, and there was a moment that he was eating dinner with us and he was talking about his daughter's love of roller coasters. And he was like, I'm sorry, we just keep talking about roller coasters. And I said to him, I was like, Brad, I mean, I'm not going to speak for everybody here, but I am totally cool with you talking about roller coasters because it shows how much you love your daughter. And so anyway, yeah, he also sounds exactly the same in person as he does on the podcast. I was like, that is legitimately how you talk. That's so cool. So, yeah, I loved all of them, and I just wish that I could like go and hang on all their adventures. So,
Yeah, I'm with you. And when you said, hey Brad, I could listen to you talk about roller coasters because it shows me how much you love your daughter. I thought you were gonna say something like, Brad, I could listen to you talk about the process in which paint dries because it doesn't matter what subject you're on. We just hang on your every word. And so I'm with you. Going to the Donegans, you kind of talked a little bit about their British charm. I found myself thinking like if these two were just Americans and whether they had, my Midwestern accent or a Southern accent or whatever, I wonder, how their vibe would be. And I think it just really does help when you have that straight up charm. And I mentioned this to you before we started, but I really mean it. Those two, legitimate. When I watched them interact after I saw them kind of settle into sort of who they are and they just have fun together, it seems like all the time. And I'm sure they have stuff outside in the real world, right? But when they're on stage, and they're on, legitimately, the best way I could describe them is, in all honesty, like the cutest thing ever. If you get like two, 4 or 5 year old kids at the wedding reception dance, you got the disco ball going and they're playing whatever, oldies song and grandma and grandpa are out there dancing, doing the jitterbug or whatever. And you got these two little kids that are dancing as though no one else is looking, just having a blast. And then the song ends and they kind of look at each other for a second. And they shrug their shoulders and either keep going or, or the next one goes. It's just like they were so much fun to just watch exist. And I thought that was just really, really incredible. And I mentioned it earlier, but I'm sorry, I've heard Alan on a handful of podcasts speaking about business, and he really understands the business side of things. And man, does he understand the individual and people side of things. And I think that's kind of rare to be able to marry that all together, which I thought was really impressive. And then I'll be honest, I don't know if this is true, but the vibe I get is that Katie is newer to some of this and maybe started to get more involved more recently because, I mean, she even said it a couple of times like, this is Alan's thing or that's Alan's thing. And it's clear that he is the driver, there's no question about that. But man, if this is newish, they have figured it out quick, in my opinion. And of course, Brad, I mean, just once again, I sat down with him at dinner, and what I like is authentic people. So earlier you said, I'm sorry I didn't answer the question the way you wanted. I'd rather you just answer it accurately. I sat down with that guy at dinner, and I asked him a question, and we talked through it or whatever. And it was related to the podcast and what some of his intentions were and how he wants things to flow. And then the next day, when we were recording a live podcast, I was paying attention to whatever he was saying beforehand, and everything that he said right before he recorded the podcast was like word for word what I'd heard at dinner. And anytime you tell the same story twice, it's usually the truth, right? And it was just so interesting to listen to and watch play out. So, but I'm with you. They can only be in so many places at once, and yet they somehow manage to give and give and give. And I don't know. I mean, it's just two of us that we were not scared to insert ourselves into discussing and chatting and being around them. So maybe some others didn't quite have some of the experience that we had, but it's pretty impressive and fun to watch. And so just one more thank you from me to you. Man, you all were wonderful and we appreciate you so much. So we're going to shift gears and go, I think, a different direction, but I want to cover this subject that I would consider it was sort of a glaring subject or a glaring question that really felt left open. And since we just got done shedding some love on Brad Barrett, we need to close the loop on this, in my opinion, because you can't leave something open-ended. And yet it was one of the things that felt left open-ended from our meetup in our group. And so not only from this event did we hear this, but also in the FI community in general, people talk about life on the other side. There's I'm not FI yet. And then there's life on the other side. I am financially independent. And that question kind of boils down to, and what we ended up hearing was, is life better on the other side? Or is life not all that much better on the other side, other than you just achieved a financial independence number? And I'm really interested to hear kind of your free roll on this. So the question kind of boils down to, is life better on the other side once you hit FI, or is it really not all that much better? And I realize you're on the path, as am I. Neither of us are there yet, but what do you think?
So when I read this beforehand, because of course we prepped for this, we're not just free rolling. I was thinking about the fact that I don't know if I can really know because I have never been in that situation. All I can do is postulate as to what it would be like. And so just imagining what that life is like. I mean, there's a reason why we're all going towards it, and so there's probably this vision we have for our life after FI. And whether or not you keep working, I mean, I know a lot of people want to keep working, so their life might not change that much. But for me, I would want to stop working. So I think it would be an incredibly stark difference between pre-FI and post-FI. And I have heard that the amount in your bank account is highly uncorrelated to how you feel about money. And it's something that resonates with me because I am at a place where my net worth is in the 200,000s, right? 10 years ago, my net worth was negative 60,000. And 10 years ago, I couldn't have imagined even having 10 grand to my name. And now I have multiples of that. And I still feel behind, right? I still feel like, and I think part of it is a little hard being in the financial independence community when a lot of people retired at 35 and you're 37. I'm 37, and you're not even halfway there yet. You start to feel behind because you're comparing yourself. Obviously, comparison is the thief of joy, but you can say that all day long. It is what human beings do. We compare ourselves. It is naturally part of who we are as human beings. So I guess I am thinking that even when I do reach that number, what I worry about is being able to pull the trigger on actually leaving my job, because I might still feel behind or like I don't have enough, but I'm hoping not, because one thing that I did that I actually want to talk about a little bit that's a little different from what other people in the financial independence community do a lot of the time. When we first, find this movement, a lot of us are like, oh, I need to get to a 50% savings rate. So I got to cut everything, cut all the lattes, cut, my car, like trade it in for something cheap and gross. And we get to this point where we're living this like shabby lifestyle, but wow, I am saving so much money. But I think the part that people forget is you have to continue living that lifestyle post FI. That's the other side of the equation, right? Is it's not just saving 50%, it's living on that other 50% and continuing to live on that 50% forever. And, barring inflation, of course. So what I did, I of course cut at first, and then I was miserable. So I was like, I don't want to do this. So instead, I increased my lifestyle. I actually allowed the lifestyle inflation creep in, and I built the life that I wanted to live before I got to my savings rate. My savings rate was more in the normal range of, 15 to 25. And now I have this beautiful home that I own, and I have, I have a budget where I can spend grotesquely on, garden supplies, but I also have areas that I don't spend on because it doesn't matter to me, like a car, or like eating out or clothes. Like none of that matters to me because I work from home and sit in my pajamas all day. Um, so I design the life that I want to live, and I know that there's probably a level up from this as well. And then that is when I started going towards the 50% savings rate. And I did that by increasing my income rather than decreasing my life. And the reason why I want to talk about that is because I think that I think Brad has started talking about that as well in the last few years, him and Jonathan, about being valuists instead of being that radical fire person that lives in a van down by the river, you know? And I think that, concept, that latter idea is what the media has in their mind about what fire and financial independence is. And it's really not. It doesn't have to be that. Anyway, so I just think on the other side of this, I'm hoping my life doesn't change much because I'm already living that life that I love. I think I'll just be able to do more of what I love, more traveling, more gardening, more hiking. And by that time, I'm hoping to have kids. So being able to spend more time with my kids. Sidebar, real quick. I was in therapy yesterday and talking about when my partner and I are going to have kids. And she mentioned, we live in this society that is so fast all the time, and kids really need to learn by doing instead of you as the parent doing for them all the time. But she was like, it's so hard to do that when you're trying to like go, go, go in the morning and your kid wants to get a glass of water. And so you just get it for them because it's so much easier than allowing them to get the chair, get the glass, pour the water, spill the water, clean up the water, all of that probably takes about 20 minutes, whereas you getting them the water would take two. And the thing that went through, we were talking about something completely different, but the thing that went through my head when she said that is I was like, and this is why I want to reach FI. I want to be there for my kid and teach them slowly and have that slow life that, you know, isn't just grinding, grinding, grinding all the time. And, I have this phrase where I'm like, cancel grind culture. And I love that. I did not come up with that, obviously, but I am so here for that. And the funny thing is like I have a full-time job and a side hustle. So it's hilarious that I'm saying that, but it's true. This is where I want to get to. And that's what I'm hoping the other side looks like. What about for you? What is the other side going to look like for you, do you think?
Well, I'm gonna respond to a couple things you said first, and
Sure.
kind of back to the relive of the event. There was kind of this concept of the carrot and the stick, and the carrot being financial independence, the other side, and the stick, if I recall, kind of being what we're going towards. And so we're both in the stick area. I am much closer to the carrot phase, and I'm smiling about it because it's great. But a couple things. So what it sounds like to me is you have taken in and digested this information, internalized it, personalized it, sought outside counsel and coaching on it. And I think you're towards your stick right now is you are going the right direction so that you're not just waiting for the other side to flip a switch and make your life better. You're making your life better now. And a couple of other things. One, I still love the word postulate. I actually had to Google that before we met because you wrote it in a note, and I had to know precisely what it meant. And just to make sure I didn't sound like an idiot. But then here I am exposing my deep, dark secrets, and I'm not all that bright. So congratulations on your big words. You mentioned something you worry about, and I forget exactly what you said you worry about, but it reminded me of this awesome quote. I think it's in Tim Ferriss's Tribe of Mentors, where he asks a bunch of questions to a bunch of people, and they could answer all of those questions or just one of those questions. And one of the questions was, when you worry, what do you do? Or something to that extent. And one of the people answered, I sit back and I think about it and I wonder, would it help? Usually the answer is no. So then I focus on not worrying and moving on. And I thought, whatever it is that you were worrying about, maybe that'll sink in or resonate with you. And last but not least, it's interesting how you said you stripped your life away down to nothing. I think that's very common that we do that when we find the FI community. I actually am proud to say I never did that. Other than the first 2 years, 22 to 24, paying off $47,000 in debt way back in time. Other than that time period, I never wanted to just barely get by in the name of achieving some goal that was super far down the road. And I don't think I invented this phrase, but I've been saying it a lot lately, live now while living for later. And I think that's precisely what you just laid out is you figured out a way to design your life now in a way that you love so that going to work and earning your money is getting you some stuff you can enjoy now and allowing you to set yourself up for later so that when you cross that FI line, you might look around and do exactly what you just said. I know you said you don't want to work and you know what you want to lean in towards, but I think if we took 100 people on the path and they did exactly what you sound like you're doing, we'd get 100 slightly different results. And some of those people would go, you know what? I built this life that I love and I don't want to have to touch my nest egg yet. And so instead, I'm going to scale back my work or I'm going to shift careers into the less busy or less stressful career and do something slightly different so that I can garden more and study more and do all the other things that you mentioned or lean into this side hustle or I want to go volunteer more, whatever it may be. And I think it's super cool that if we take the time to figure out if there's something, I'm going to say air quotes, wrong with us, because that's something I've gone through a journey in the last 15 months of kind of what's wrong with me? Why am I not happy about this or that? When we take the time and go through and put in the work and the effort, whether it's finding a life coach or a therapist or a counselor or a group of people, if we work on all of that now, I think the other side is destined to be at least slightly better. But it shouldn't have to be this dramatic change. And I think that's maybe the best way that I can close the loop on this, which is really just I found a way to respond to all your stuff and tie mine into it all into one. So I'm going to now ask you, did I answer whatever your question was? Because I rambled and I don't remember.
My question was just what's it going to look like for you on the other side, which I think I would like you to say more about that actually.
Yeah. So I am one of these people that I have never, well, I shouldn't say never. I think like everyone, I thought, oh my gosh, I don't have to work until I'm 65 and grind and blah, 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 blah. I was initially that person thought I'm going to retire early at whatever age. And now as time has gone on and I've expanded my life to enjoy it more, I am so much more comfortable with working in some capacity, doing whatever it is that I like. So I don't see myself just shutting the spigot off. I see myself seeking wildly flexible work. So things where I can hopefully coach, mentor, guide, lead, and it might be business for self. I'm hoping to carry it on in the career space in a more traditional sense. But I think at the end of the day, I'll be happier on the other side because I will be completely free from worry from money. And I know you said the Ramit quote earlier about what we have in our bank account is not often correlated to how we feel about money. And I understand why he says that, but I am such like a logical zeros and ones, dollars and cents person that like I know what the number is. And when it hits there, I'm going to go, huh, this is great. And kind of like I said to you, I feel like you're leading your way towards where you want to go. I kind of am the same way. I kind of reached the point where as I'm getting closer to my FI number, I've been so much more willing to just be like, you know what? Who cares if it's one extra year of work or 5 extra years of work because I'm going to work anyway. So all I'm going to do is let the nest egg take care of itself. And I'm going to do whatever it takes to cover my household expenses and some fun along the way. So I think it'll be happier if we design it that way, which happens to tie right back into the actual name of this event, which is designing your extraordinary life. And it sounds like you were already on that path and this validated it. I was kind of already on this path as well. And this whole event validated it. So any other thoughts on that general subject?
Yeah, and this is not at all in your prep material, so it's going to be completely off the cuff. So, when it comes to the other side and pursuing financial independence, how do you bring your wife into the mix? Because I'd like to talk about, you know, partners and, we're not in a vacuum by ourselves, right? At least you and I aren't. And a lot of people probably listening to this probably aren't either. And or if they are now, they won't be down the line. So, how did you bring her along on this and how does she feel about this journey?
So this is an interesting question because I think I'm a little spoiled in that I found this when I was 22 and I was working on my debt freedom journey right when we started dating. And I just kind of said, here's the scoop. This is what's going on. I am basically dead set on getting this knocked out and out of my life so I can no longer worry about it. And if you're cool dating a guy who, because she knew me pre-debt payoff journey, and I was happy to run up a bar tab and just, do whatever. I was living whatever I felt like living like. And I said, if you're cool with, kind of pivoting and, dates are going to be a little cheaper and just a little bit more. I probably didn't use the word frugal. I probably said cheap or whatever back then. If you're cool with that, if you're on board, then, I promise you someday you'll thank me for this random path that I'm on. And so we started it way back then, which made it a lot easier. And Then when we got married, it was, hey, great, now we have two incomes. And it just, all of that showed up, even like when we bought our first house. We really thought about it. And what's interesting is I am the natural spender 1000% in this relationship. Yet I'm also the one that is the most obsessed with pulling the trigger and doing all of the things that make the FI money build. But she is the natural saver, the natural, more frugal one. I'm the one who's more likely to go drop $400 on a whim because I wanted some accessory for my smoker. It's just I have to rein myself in. And so we've always said, I hope this helps. We've always said we are a team. We work together on things. We communicate about this stuff in advance. And whenever it comes to, hey, maybe this is a year that we ratchet up the 401k and max them both out instead of just one. This is what it means. Instead of the money going here, maybe a 2-year cash emergency fund, instead of it going there, we're now moving it to the market. Or instead of it going to the 401k, I want to draw that back. And I've got this opportunity for a multifamily investment. And we talk through that stuff. And we both share what our opinions are and land wherever we land. And she kind of lets me pull the final trigger when the time comes to do the mechanics of it. But we always communicate about it to make sure that she knows what's going on. And I'll leave you with this when it comes to the spouse that is not as excited about clicking the buttons as you are. I have what I proudly call a 13-page death letter for my wife. And it's very detailed what my intentions are for the plan, what to expect from the plan. Please read this book. I know you're going to want to do this, but please don't do it. And if you do, wait a year and talk to your brother first. By the way, your brother knows and understands this stuff, blah, 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 blah. So that, God forbid, if something happens to me, at least there's a guide for what we were going for and what we were building. So I hope that answers your question. It boils down to, succinctly, we try and be a team.
Yeah, that definitely does. And on my end of it, so I met my partner only 3 years ago. So when I was 34. And side note to anybody who is still searching and thinking, oh my God, I'm in my 30s, I'm going to be alone forever. No, you're not. Um, you can find love later in life. It's great. It's probably even better. I don't think if I was 22 and I found somebody, it would have been a good thing. So um, anyway, I digress. So very similar to you and your wife, where he is the saver. He is very good at saving money. I mean, when he got like a payout at the beginning of the year because this company was bought and it was so much money. I'm not gonna say how much, but it was a lot. And he just saved all of it. And I was like, you didn't even want to spend any of it. And he's like, no, I'm just gonna save it. And he did have goals for it. He wants to get LASIK and like a couple other things done like that. And so he put it aside into like CDs and things like that. And just, but he saved it. And I'm thinking to myself, last year, I also got a couple of windfalls, and I don't want to say I spent it all because I did spend it all, but I spent it all on investing, meaning I bought a bunch of VT sacks. So that's what I spent it on. I didn't just put it in my savings account. I should just tell you all, this is one of my downfalls is I am very bad at having an emergency fund. I hate having cash sitting around. So whenever I get a big windfall, I'm like, ooh, investments. So anyway, I just think it's so funny that I would say in our relationship, he's the one who's quote good with money, at least traditionally speaking, because I am also the spender.
Mm.
And I just dropped $7,000 on adding a bathroom to our house because there are now two of us who live here. He just moved in a month ago, and there was only one bathroom. And I was like, each butt needs a toilet, so let's add a bathroom. And like I just put it on a 0% credit card that I'm going to pay off over 20 months, which is I do not recommend. Do not do that, by the way, unless like you're advanced, but like don't do that. Because I wanted it. I wanted it now. And so I wanted to spend money on it. But I also balance that with like putting a crap load into the market. So it's really funny. And then I also like to get into the details of tactics. I love that stuff. That's why I listen to podcasts all the time, because I'm like, is there a new tactic that I can learn that I can implement? Usually not, because I've done it all. Whereas my partner, he could care less about talking about money. Like he's good at it. He's got it automated. And it's so funny when we have conversations, like I'll flip to a money topic. And whereas before on whatever we were talking about before that, he was like engaged and responding and stuff. When I switch to money topics, he just shuts down. I don't think he's listening, but he has nothing to add. He doesn't really want to talk about this because he really doesn't care that much. He's very much like JL Collins' daughter. Yeah, and I still, but the thing is we're still on the same path because every time he comes home from work, he's like, I can't wait to quit my job. He's like, I can't wait until we retire early. So he's on board, but he just doesn't want to do the day in, day out talk about it all the time. He's like, no, I just want to set it up, forget about it, and that's that. And honestly, that's probably healthier mentally. So, we are also a team, and I actually like that we're a little bit different because I think we complement each other and we balance each other out because he is the saver who is like, I just want to automate it and forget it and live my life. And whereas like because I'm tactical, there are some things that he can learn from me as well. So yeah, I think the teammate thing is huge. And I would just, if anybody's looking for advice about this, communication is also really huge. Like you said, getting your communication skills, I mean, it's going to help with your relationship in general, but just learning how to talk about money, which can be very emotionally fraught, is very important. And I'm going to plug therapy right now. Therapy is huge. It really is huge. I've been in it for 7 years and it has made me a whole new person. And my partner is in it. And we just know how to communicate. We just know because it's something you're taught how to do in therapy, including communicating about money. So yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I am a pretty loud fan of therapy as well in the last, whatever it's been, 15 months or something. And it's something that 3 years ago I would have never considered. And then, there's a reason and a purpose. And what's interesting is, one, it was very, very helpful and has been very helpful. And two, I, for whatever reason, just wanted to be open about it with friends, family, whatever. And it's shocking how many people are like, oh yeah, I see somebody every other week, or I talk to so and so once a month. And I just think it's a very, very important step. So for anybody out there who's ever felt weird about it, I actually, what put me over the edge was Jillian Johnsrud talks about it a ton in her former podcast, which I'm now spacing what it was called, but she would talk about it a ton. And finally one day I was like, maybe that would help. And poof, that was it. So I'm glad to hear that y'all are a team. It's good to be a team now before you officially, tie that knot someday. It's so good to be a team now, and it's completely okay to have different levels of, who's excited about what. It's probably healthy, like you mentioned, because one of you should be hungry to sprint after it because the other one doesn't want to have to click the buttons. And so as long as you agree on what the results and goals are, then life will be pretty dang good. So, all right. One
Real quick, Jillian Johnsrud's, she has two podcasts. One is Everyday Courage, and the other one is Retire Often.
Retire Often is the new one. I just listened to the first one or two recently, but yes, Everyday Courage. I could not think about what it was
No,
called.
that's,
So
I Googled it.
thanks for saving me. Last thing, and then I think we'll slide towards wrapping this thing up. And I think we're kind of right on time here, doing pretty good. So there were a number of different exercises we went through as groups, and we were really, I'm going to say forced. We were given space to take in a bunch of information, and then we were given 15 to 30 minutes to go off by ourselves, sit down, type, handwrite, whatever your thing was. I type because I can't read my handwriting. But I think the biggest thing we've heard post event is that dang post-it note exercise was terrific. And so you named your question earlier, and I'm going to opt out of naming mine just because it ties into something I'm literally going through right now. And I'm going to choose to keep that private for the moment. But the post-it note situation was essentially you presented your question. And you mentioned it earlier. How could you basically rid yourself of imposter syndrome to believe that you belong in this space or whatever it was? And what were people supposed to do? And like literally, like how helpful was it when you read all their notes and heard them coming in?
Yeah, so they were supposed to write down any and all the ideas on a post-it note and basically chuck it in my direction, so that I could collect it. And I was also meant to encourage them. So there were one key part about this was there was no discouragement. There was no, I've already done this and it didn't work. There was nothing like that. It was, oh, great idea, great idea. Keep them coming. Love this, love this. And even if you'd already done it before, even if you knew it wouldn't work, you want to encourage the people who are giving you these ideas to keep giving you these ideas, because the minute you discourage somebody from doing something, it just deflates their balloon, right? And I think Alan actually talked about that prior to the exercise. that when you I love the saying, when you yuck on other people's yums, it makes you, yeah, such a great phrase. Like I want that tattooed like on my forehead because I feel like I do that a lot. Um, when you do that, it just deflates people and makes them not want to open up. And so his whole thing was don't do that when people are giving you ideas, just encourage. Just encourage. That's all you want to do. And it was great. And like I said, I haven't gone through all my post-it notes, but I remember the theme of, basically building my business in a way that was like through learning new skills, learning this, learning that, taking the Rebel Entrepreneur, you know, um, course that they have, things like that. So it was a great exercise, and I plan to siphon through those soon. They're all in a notebook that I have. But it got me thinking about how I want to do my podcast more than anything else. And so I think it definitely did inspire me to take action on the next step of what I already wanted to do.
Yeah, I think that was for me the most powerful because it was the first time that I got to ask other people to speak into my life directly, and as did you, right?
Mhm.
And I think there's one little piece to the process that you highlighted on it from your perspective. Don't, what did you say? Don't yuck on their yums, whatever that was, right?
Yep.
Don't shut down their answer, right? You as the recipient. But the rest of the table was to honor the same command. So if you shout out, buy real estate, and I go, real estate is the dumbest thing ever. My uncle was a landlord. That's going to kill the table as well. And I thought that was so cool because there were ideas that, I in my head went, yeah, I don't know, but that's my perspective. I wasn't the recipient. The person receiving it, that might be the perfect thing for them, and I can't project onto them that that idea is good or bad for them. Only they could determine if it was. And I thought that was really, really powerful and really cool. And the other piece to that table event that I happened to be at is in 8 minutes. I think we each got 8 minutes. I have so many post-it notes, and I had to lay them all out and categorize them. And the part about it wasn't they just chucked it at you and put it in front of you, but they said the thing out loud, and then it drove someone else at the table to have something that it might have been adjacent, or it got them unstuck, from wherever they were. Like they just writer's block, and then all of a sudden, poof, somebody says this, and for whatever reason, they're going down a new avenue. And one last quick item, you mentioned you can still find love at 33 or 35 or whatever you said. At my post-it table, there is a wonderful couple. I absolutely adored my time with them. I've actually private messaged them because I've got a big trip coming this summer, and they live in one of the destination cities, I believe, that we're going to travel to. And I hope to link up with them. And they were so much fun to watch. Just in general, I had a cocktail with them night one, and then they're at my post-it table. Okay, so the other thing that I loved about having a couple at the table is it was interesting to watch the husband give the wife answers and the wife give the husband's answers. And me, I'm just like going, man, has this come up at home before? Like, it's, and I really liked watching the encouraging nature and then watching them both kind of react to each other in just such a loving way. And so anyway, the love at 32, 33, 35, whatever you said, hey, they found it too. There's another example. So all right. I think that pretty much crushes our list. There's one other item on here that I'm going to let go because I think we nailed it in a couple of other areas. So, is there anything else from a niche category space, anything that you want to hit on? I think we covered this pretty well. We hit a lot of different perspectives. I think we gave the event a little bit of love. Are you good to go or are you ready to wrap?
I am good to go. I'm ready to wrap. I think I would just say that if anybody's thinking of joining an event like this and is kind of on the fence, just do it. You won't regret it. And even if you're spending a little more than you planned, it's so worth it. I always think that spending money on experiences is always worth it.
I love it. Well, for anybody that's listening, if you want another perspective, if you want the short form version on Instagram, I know you can find Megan by Googling a latte money because that's how I found her information to get ready and do some extra prep for the show. So it's at a latte money, right?
Yep, that's right.
And at a lattemoney.com,
It's a lattemoneyinvesting.com.
investing.com. All right. Thank you for the clarification. Well, Megan, thanks a ton. I mean, this is pretty sweet. We tried to do this last week. We had a scheduling conflict. You came through for me this week. And just, I really appreciate you hopping on and giving this a shot with me. It's really exciting to do this in general. I hope it gives you a little bit of confidence and excitement towards your next deal when you're ready to start and launch. And hopefully, after this is done and released, you still like me. If you'd like, I will happily come on and be a guest on your show. And this was just a ton of fun, kind of reliving the Vegas event. I hope those that were there find this to be kind of fun to re-listen to, get excited or motivated one more time to go dig into their post-it notes or go look at their note pages that they took down. And if you haven't gotten started yet on whatever it was you want to go tackle towards building your extraordinary life, the classic saying in investing is the best time to plant a tree was yesterday. Or I'm sorry, was 20 years ago. The next best time is today. Same thing here, fam. Go crack open the notebook, get excited again, and get after it. All right. Thank you for listening to the MyFICapsule podcast. Now, let's go explore yours.
Thanks for tuning in and listening to Mitch and me rehash our Fire in Vegas event. And thanks again for tuning in to the Everyday Fi podcast. Thanks for listening to the Everyday Fi podcast. If you're loving the show, here are some things you can do. Number 1, subscribe in your favorite podcast player and share the show with your friends and family. Number 2, please leave a review. I'm always looking for ways to improve the show. Number 3, check out my website, everyday-fi.com, where you can listen to all the episodes and leave comments for myself and the guest. Number 4, if you're interested in sharing your own financial independence story, you can find a submission form at everyday-fi.com/podcast. And finally, number 5, join my Patreon membership for only $5 a month at patreon.com/everydayfipodcast. This is a one-woman show, so every little bit counts. See you next time as we continue to go down the path to financial freedom.